Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 10th, 2018 regular caucus meeting for the City of Brook Park. Michelle, please call the roll of members.
Scott?
Here.
Bergio?
Here.
Orcutt?
Here.
Stem?
Here.
Mancini?
Here.
Poindexter?
Here.
Salvatore?
Here.
Everyone, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving to item 3, approval of minutes of preceding meetings. Regular caucus meeting held on March 27th, 2018. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. There's a change I think we need to make on page 13, paragraph 8 and 9. It's just redundant. It repeats itself twice, so we could just strike the first paragraph 8 and 9 on page 13, and then it would be correct.
So we need to strike paragraphs 8 and 9 for redundancy.
One of them.
I'm sorry?
Just got to strike one of them.
No, there's 2 lines that are the same.
The first one starts with Mr. Vecchio commented, and then the next one is Mr. Poindexter stated. Those repeat after that.
We strike one of the.
I'm sorry?
We strike one of the 2, correct?
Yes, just those 2.
One of the 2.
All right, so we need to put that in a form of motion to amend the minutes.
I'll make a motion to omit page 13, paragraph 8 and 9 from these minutes.
I'll support.
Motion to amend omitting paragraph 8 and 9 of page 13, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
All right, the motion has been approved. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes for March 27th.
Support.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Mancini?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Motion is approved to amend the minutes as stated. Moving on to item 4, discussion. First item is Division of Liquor Control, CTRFO from permit number 3274888 for a D1, D2, D3, and D3A to Goodwin Food and Spirits LLC, located at 13311 Brook Park Road, Brook Park, Ohio 44142, from 1981-13311 Brook Park LLC, DBA Amber's Cabaret, permit number 6548557, located at 13311 Brook Park Road, Brook Park, Ohio 44142, for a D1, D2, D3, and D3A. Postmark date 4/27/2018, per Council President Vecchio. Mr. Salvatore.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the law director. Madam Law Director, were you able to find out the ownership?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore, I am still working on this and trying to do my due diligence. Obviously, I think this is an important license to pay attention to. I've attempted to contact Denise Fry, and I've been unsuccessful. So Monday, the law department sent a letter to her at the designated address on the paperwork, asking her to contact us. So this may take, another week in order to determine all the factors involved with this.
Okay, well, thank you. Then I wouldn't want to see us make a motion that this was discussed, that they have this moved to the next caucus agenda for next Tuesday.
I think that would be appropriate.
Support.
Mr. Salvatore, would that be the caucus prior to council or the next regularly scheduled caucus?
The next caucus prior to the council.
Okay, so that would be the April 17th. All right, so motion to move this to the April 17th caucus prior to council meeting, properly supported. Discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Perugio,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will appear on the 4/17/2018 caucus prior to council agenda. Item number 2, request approval of lot consolidation and lot split for new construction at permanent parcel numbers 344-03-076 and 077-078 at 5211 West 149th Street, located in the U1 A5 zone, per Council President Vecchio, received from the Planning Commission on April 3rd, 2018. In attendance tonight, we have Margaret Young. Margaret, if you'd like to come to the podium, if council would have questions for yourself. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Margaret Young, and I'm currently located at 4266 Wooster Road in Fairview Park, Ohio, 44126.
Thank you. Council, the floor is open. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you for coming tonight, Ms. Young. I just had one question. I noticed in the notes here, it said that you were originally going to build, requested all 5 lots be put into one large lot, and you couldn't
Yes.
tie into the sanitation.
What happened on that was I was going to build a 72-foot wide ranch with a 3-car garage with 3.5 bathrooms, and 1 bathroom being down in the basement. But Wayne Holmes, who was is the general contractor for that particular house, told me that I would not be able to get the bathroom in the basement without extensive additions onto it. And so I was way overpriced on my house was over $200,000. And then with the additional charges that they wanted to do, that I decided that this was not the place to be building my house. And so I chose to build it in a different location. So since I went through the expense of consolidating all 5 lots, paying for the trees to be removed, the survey, I may have a lot of money tied up in the consolidation, and then to decide not to build there was very expensive for me to make that decision. So when I purchased the property, there were 5 sublots, but 2 of the sublots were at 50 feet combined with 1 permanent parcel number. The second one was combined for 50 feet, and then the third one was a 25-foot lot. I did not want to build on a 50-foot lot because I just decided it was just too small in order to build a ranch with a 2-car garage. So what I did is I consolidated them all back together again, and then I decided that it's the corner of 149th and Elm. And so when I spoke with your building commissioner, he had said the sideline clearance is on the corner lot, whereas he gave me, it was 11 feet. But I didn't want the house to be that close to the sidewalk, so I decided to have the corner lot at 65 to give it an extra 5 feet, and then the middle lot being at 60. And so when we were at the zoning appeals, I was told that they're not going to grant me any variances for sideline clearances, on there, that I was going to have to build within the confines of the 60 feet, so that I had to have an 11 and a 5, maximum 16-foot sidelines, 30-foot setback, 21-foot on the rear, and the house is just going to have to fit on the lots that way. So the only thing about it is that my sister just went into a nursing home, and when she found out that my partner and I were building 2 new houses on 149th and Elm. She said, I don't want to be in a nursing home. I want to live next door to you. Can't you live in the corner house and I live next door to you? So I'm not saying that we're going to sell the houses to two strangers. You know, I might get stuck living there on the corner house anyhow, but that's what our plans are. We want to build a ranch. We are going to be building with a 12-course basement, 2-car attached garage, you know, on there. We're trying to go as large as we can go on the space that we have available. And unfortunately, it's not going to be as large as I would like because we can't get any sideline clearances, variances on it. If I could have gotten some variances on the sidelines, then we would have gone larger. But the house is probably going to be about 1,300 square feet with a full basement. And my understanding from your building commissioner that the average house in Brook Park's under 1,000 unless it's a bungalow, you know, on there, and so that we're above what the norm is right now. But you know, like I say, I would have preferred to have gone larger if we could have, but we can't. Were there any other questions? I mean, it's a standard ranch with a 2-car garage, you know, asphalt roof, aluminum vinyl siding, you know, regular thermal pane windows. We're going to use a 2x6 sidewall construction so that we can use R19 insulation on the sidewalls, and so we're going to try to do as nice a job as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Margaret, very good to hear that you're building in Brook Park. I mean, we always welcome that.
Thank you.
Sometimes your people were moving, we're selling, or whatever, and you know, to build that's great. It's just great to hear as a community. I'm sure everybody's excited about that, and thank you. But I do have one question through the chair to Councilman Bergio. Was there any on that planning commission? Was there any hang-ups that anything that? I mean, I know it went through, but.
Ted answered a lot of our questions. We did have a lot of questions that we asked Mrs. Young, and she explained it very well to all of the Planning Commission members, and so we've gone through it all, and we were pretty satisfied with it, and we passed 5-0.
Oh, okay, I'll take your word on that. And yeah, Ted definitely does a good job. And again, Margaret, thank you very much for building in Brook Park. Absolutely.
Thank you. It was my first choice in order to build in Brook Park. If the sewers were down lower in the ground, my house would be on that lot, but your sewers are up real high right at that point.
2 standard ranches are good to have too, so not too small, not too big. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's always a pleasure to have someone come before us and talk about building something new. That's something that we, especially in the area of housing, and we just don't have a lot of vacant lots available. And you certainly have what appears as if it's a good plan, provided you're following all the rules and regulations set forth by the building department. I think it's a good idea. And I support it, so I would definitely be supporting it tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Scott.
Hi, Mrs. Young. How are you again?
Thank you.
Just to let everybody know, she came before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and she passed with flying colors 7-0 on. I mean, sorry, 6-0 on everything. So the BZA had no issues with her. She presented it, and we wholly endorse this project. We think it's a very good project. And again, thanks for sticking around in Brook Park. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Council, so Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Young, thank you very much for coming in front of us today. I think you've picked a very good neighborhood. Fair Lawn has got a lot of character to it, and it's one of my favorites in Brook Park. So I wanted to welcome you. I did get the opportunity to go to the Planning Commission meeting and see everything that you were talking about. And I think it's a great plan for our community, and especially for that neighborhood.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, you're building 2 homes there, and you had intentions to have family members moving in there?
I'm not sure. My sister just moved into Vitalia down in Strongsville, and she hates it. You know, and so when she knows that I'm building 2 houses there in Brook Park, she says, I would love to live next door to you. And the rest of the family members keep saying, do you really want an 84-year-old sister living next door to you that's high maintenance? And I say, hey, if she wants to, then I'm going to have to. What am I going to do? I mean, I can't say no, you know, and if that's what her decision is, when the houses get built, we should be finished with the houses within a 4 or 5 month period of time. You know, that if she wants to move there, then I guess I will be a resident of Brook Park.
Oh, terrific.
And my house in Strongsville will have to be sold.
Oh, okay, terrific. So that's something that you're looking to do over the summer?
Well, yes, because we're going to break ground right away. And so once we break ground, actually all 3 houses are going to be broke ground right away. Wayne Holmes was under contract with me in August of 2017, and it had to do with a fire that I had on a rental property that I owned. And it's one reason why I had to use a known builder so that I didn't have any problems with my insurance company. And unfortunately, why I had to be up so high in order to be able to do what I had to do. But, you know, Brook Park would have been fun. I'd have been perfectly fine there. It's close to all my rental properties that I own. My guys are like coming to where I would be in Brook Park. I mean, it's easy to drive. It's onto the free. I mean, I know the area. I used to live in Cleveland on 160th Street, and I live in Fairview Park right now. So I'm very familiar with the area, and I like the area. But the fact is that I'm a real estate broker. You don't build a $240,000 house in a $120,000 neighborhood. I mean, it would have been okay if I could have gotten the bathroom in the basement. Then I said, oh, well, the heck with it. I don't care. You know, this is what I want, and I'm going to do it anyhow. But I couldn't get the bathroom in the basement, and I wanted to finish the recreation room off, and there was a lot of things I had planned for what I wanted to do, and it just wasn't coming together. So that's why I went through it. It was very expensive for me to change my mind. You know, plus I just spent $4,000 taking down the dead trees on the lot and grinding down the stumps. I wouldn't have done that, you know, if I wasn't planning to build on the lot. But I wanted everything to be perfect when I went onto the lot. And unfortunately, the field supervisor should have told me when he went there that I wasn't going to be able to do this. But he didn't tell me until after the fact. I mean, after I spent $4,000 cutting down the trees, grinding down the stumps, and then he tells me.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm welcoming you. I think it's a great plan. I think it's going to be great for that neighborhood.
Thank you.
And I will be supporting this as well. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to Brook Park and building here.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mrs. Young. Gentlemen.
Motion to move to the next council agenda. Support.
Motion to put on the next council agenda, which would be April 17th. The caucus will need this in a form of legislation for that, in a legislative form of resolution to be put on there, which is perfectly fine. So motion to move to the next council meeting, which is the 17th, properly supported. Discussion. Mr. Salvatore?
The motion should include that the legislation be ready for that meeting.
Yes.
Right? It should be drafted. So you amend that motion to have the legislation drafted.
You'll make the amendment to it, Mr. Mancini?
Yes.
All right, so motion to amend your, to amend it to include the legislation being drafted. Properly supported.
Properly supported.
Michelle, please call the roll.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Orcutt.
Yes.
Motion to move to the April 17th council agenda with legislation has been approved. Moving on to item number 3. Payment to Brandon Reynolds for live streaming of meetings per Council President Vecchio, $100 for each evening. So that I'll preface this, gentlemen, we have an outstanding balance for the month of March, along with I proposed that we cover with legislation or with appropriations for April, May, and June. that would cover Brandon and Brandy Reynolds doing the live stream along with Boxcast. So I've included possibility of an additional special meeting each month. We've already had one this month, so it would make 5 meetings this month, 5 for April, 5 for May, and 5 for June. So that would take us up to a total of $2,200 would be the appropriation to take us through the end of June to pay for Brandon and Brandy and Boxcast. Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the outstanding balance that we have right now?
I believe it is $300 for March.
Okay, so we owe them $300.
Correct.
And then you're looking for an additional, what did you say, total, $2,200?
Yeah, well,
So-
you would have $400. You would have $400 for Boxcast, and then you would have an additional $1,500 for Brandon and Brandy to cover those months, those additional months.
And we're just appropriating it just to have the money, we're just approving it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Any unused monies will go back into the general fund.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Real quick, on this invoice, is this total's at 100, should have been 700 or?
That should be 700. It's a typo on the bottom of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Poindexter?
I just had a question. Council approved $100 per night billing, and notice on the 27th we have 2 separate bills of $100 for a caucus meeting on the 27th and a special council meeting on the 27th. Is that?
Yeah,
100 per
originally,
meeting or 100 per night?
so per the original contract, $100 per night on regularly scheduled meetings, and then the special meeting, which was called additionally into that, would be an additional $100. So that special meeting was additional.
I thought our verbal, did we do that under verbal approval? We addressed that and it changed from the original agreement of $100 per meeting to $100 per night.
Correct. But like I said, the original regularly scheduled meeting, and then it turned around. We had, if you look, we had 327, 328, and 329, 3 special meetings back to back to back. So that's where the additional $100 came for that special meeting on the 27th.
Yeah, I understand the $100 charge on the 28th because that's another night, and then the 29th is another night. But the 27th is the same night as the caucus meeting where they were here already. So what we approved was $100 per night.
Right, which I fully understand. Like I said, I'm just going by what the contract reads and reiterating what it reads to us. That's at council's discretion as to what council's going to do.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Salvatore.
do you have a copy of that contract?
I don't have it with me. I think we have one in the back room here. I don't have one. Michelle has one to pull.
Was the contract expired as of that date? I mean, I thought council gave verbal approval to continue with the broadcast at $100 a night.
On February 20th, on the February 20th meeting of council, there was a motion by Mr. Salvatore, supported by Mr. Bergio, to verbally approve. Mr. Poindexter clarified the approval of $100 or $2,400 with $250 for Boxcast. Mr. Vecchio responded this would be combined into one with the $2,400 purchase requisition transfer from the mayor's budget to the council budget. Out of that, there is $100 to Brandon Reynolds per evening. Mr. Poindexter asked council is voting to approve $2,400 and taking $100 out of that money to pay the Reynolds. Mr. Vecchio responded the Reynolds will be paid on a per evening basis and also Boxcast out of the $2,400. The approval is to pay the Reynolds $100 per night and to pay the monthly Boxcast bill out of the $2,400 budgeted. Mr. Salvatore stated the $2,400 has already been appropriated, so council is approving $100 so the person live streaming the meetings gets paid. The additional monies will be made under a second motion but come from the $2,400 already appropriated. Roll call was done. Payment to Boxcast was the next. Monthly invoice for meetings out of the $2,400 was appropriated, and those were approved.
I think that answers the question. If I could, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to Finance Director. Out of that original $2,400 appropriation, is any of it left?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore, out the check and see what's left on it. I don't know right now.
Okay.
I can let you know tomorrow or by next Tuesday.
Okay. Well, Just for a point of clarification, I think it's pretty clear that we agreed to continue with the service. I mean, I think it's a good service. I think it's great that the residents get to watch it, but we did approve verbal approval, which this will require verbal approval too, to continue on for an additional expenditure, but it was set up for $100 a night. So I don't know how we can pay any more than that unless council wants to make a motion to that effect, but Councilman Poindexter is correct in his observation that there are 2 meetings on that night with 2 separate charges, which there should have only been 1.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you. And two, on that, what we're talking, I do agree with Councilman Poindexter. I do remember us with verbal approval for $100 per evening. Have we, something else we can look into too, have we maybe made that mistake before too after that, where we had 2 meetings, a caucus and a council, out of the money that we appropriated that time on verbal approval?
No, through this time it's been for each evening. That
Okay.
was from that February 20 after the February 20th council meeting, that approval. So this one would be the one additional, which if I'm understanding correctly, we're looking at an additional charge of $100 to be removed. Am I correct?
Well, I think all we have, Mr. Chairman, I think all we have to do is just move this to the next council agenda under verbal approval and approve the amount of money that we want to expend it going through April, May, and June.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're budgeting $500 a month, anticipating 1 extra meeting, and if we're totally out of the appropriations, we'll find that out from Mr. Single tomorrow, I hope, or the next day. And we could appropriate the money, whatever monies aren't used, we can put back into the general fund at a later date.
Wouldn't we,
Mr. Mancini?
wouldn't we need the actual legislation with us to amend it, though? Appropriate, I mean, wouldn't we have to have that all with us? If we were to make that change, I mean, because I believe too that that's what it was $100 a month. I remember coming into the meeting, we were discussing it, and it was $100 a night. So, I mean, that's what I was led to believe, but.
So I would recommend that we put this under verbal approval at the next council meeting, set up at least another 1,000 or 1,200, and wait for the number from Mr. Single, and then we can always amend it Tuesday night to get us through June, assuming that we're going to still be doing it the same way when we move into the new office.
Okay. If that's what you're suggesting to do, I suggest we put that in the form of a motion and move it forward.
So move, Mr. Chairman. I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion to move to the April 17th council agenda under verbal approval, properly supported. Discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Mancini,
I support it, yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That will appear on the April 17th council agenda under verbal approval. Item number 4, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Greater Cleveland Auto Auction, public auctioneers for the purpose of disposing of obsolete city vehicles and declaring an emergency, introduced by Mayor Gamella per Council President Vecchio.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is pretty much a house cleaning ordinance that they've been doing work with us for many years, and they do an outstanding job. I would make a motion to just place on the next council agenda.
I'll support that.
Motion to place on the next council agenda, properly supported. Discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This will appear on the April 17th council agenda. Item number 5, capital improvements and economic development fund appropriations per Council President Vecchio. This is moved by motion from the April 6, 2018 special caucus meeting. Floor is open. Mr. Scott.
Can we make a motion to go out of regular order and go take care of the legislative committee before we move to the capital improvements?
You're free to make whatever motion you'd like, sir.
I can make a motion to go out of regular order, discuss the legislative committee, Chairman Mancini's item.
I support.
Motion to go out of the regular order of business properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Bergia, Mancini, sorry, Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergia.
Yes.
Motion is approved. We will move to letter V, Legislative Committee, Chairman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution requesting the administration, members of council, and the electorate of the city of Brook Park to support renewal of the 2019 Cuyahoga Health and Human Services Levy and declare an emergency, introduced by Council President Vecchio. Council President Vecchio.
So what this is this is a renewal. There's no additional taxes or anything to the residents. This is a Cuyahoga County renewal, basically for Metro Health. The services provided out of there, which include Life Flight, a lot of the children's services they have, services for the less fortunate families, support for their burn unit, a lot of stuff there. So this is going to appear on the the May 5th upcoming election. Mr. Mancini?
Okay, thank you. Anybody on council like to comment or offer an opinion on this? Councilman Poindexter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say that, you know, in addition to providing care for a lot of underprivileged families, Metro Health has one of the best trauma units in the area. So, you know, funding them, you're really supporting a lot of good to our community. So I will be fully supporting this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Council President Vecchio, go ahead.
Just to expand a little bit on what Councilman Poindexter said, I believe that in our vicinity, Metro Health is the only level 1 trauma center in the close vicinity of us. So that means, you know, anybody with severe injuries are taken there. I'm in full support of it, and I would hope that everybody else would be. In this case, I'm looking for co-sponsors that would like to jump on board with it.
Co-sponsors, everybody get their hand up? Because I'll agree, Council President Vecchio. I think it's a can't miss. If you read anything on this, okay, and I believe, and it's a renewal. You know, it's not money out of our pocket, but it is. But it's for a great cause. And I mean, they've advertised it at Cleveland.com. If you read out, there wasn't a plain dealer, and I just believe it's a. I mean, this is definitely one this council should be definitely behind. But go ahead, Councilman Poindexter.
No,
I had your hand up. Okay.
my hand was for co-sponsoring.
Okay, everybody co-sponsored, right? Okay. Council, what's your pleasure?
Motion to place on next council agenda.
Support.
Motion's been made, properly supported. Clerk, call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Bergia,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore.
Yes.
Okay. Renewal for 2019 Cuyahoga County Health and Human Services has been put to the April 17th council meeting. So I have Mr. Chairman out of the legislative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. I'll entertain a motion to go back to the regular order of business.
So made.
So made.
Support.
Motion to go back to the regular order of business properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Bergia,
Yes.
Orcutt.
Yes.
Motion is approved. We're back to the regular order of business. Back under item 4, discussion. Number 5, capital improvements and economic development fund appropriations per Council President Vecchio, moved by motion from the April 6, 2018 special caucus meeting. Floor is open, gentlemen. Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to talk a little bit about economic development, if we could, for a second. I was going to just start off with the breakdown at $365,000. I think we've done that a few times, and What was left in that fund was money for HMAP and grants. And through the chair to Finance Director Greg, right now for HMAP we have 50,000, and for grants we have 80,000. Those are the two balances left.
Through the chair to Councilman Orcutt, my recollection was 40,000 HMAP and then 80,000 total for the grants, of which 30,000 has already been spent, so that would leave 50.
I'm going to go through my notes real quick, if I could, just for a second. 365,000 we started off with. I'm going off the notes from Mr. Adams. 200,000 is for the senior snow plowing and grass cutting. That leaves us with 165,000. 5,000 is for property tax the city has to pay. That takes us down to 160,000. We paid out 30,000 to Quest Industries for a grant earlier this year. That takes us to 130,000. 50,000 was, from my understanding, was an HMAP, and 80,000 for grants.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, through the chair to Councilman Orcutt, I thought last week we talked about reducing the amount by 40,000, and then we're going to potentially utilize the 40,000 for a transfer to the roads program.
And that's where I was headed to make sure that we did that. I don't know if we ended up did we vote on that one? I know we voted on service and we appropriated 3 out of 4 line items on that. But that's what I wanted to do today, to see if we could.
Mr. Orcutt, there was no vote on that.
Yeah, there was no vote.
Where you were at on your numbers was correct. The last numbers I had was down to 130,000 with 80,000 in grants, with 30,000 to Quest Industries and 50,000 in the HMAP, along with 5,000 in real estate taxes.
Perfect. Well, I was going to make a suggestion this evening that I don't think that we we take all that grant money away. I believe that we have to have a good portion of that money in that toolbox for Mr. Adams to work with. I think it helps us out when we're in contention with businesses coming in here. I think it'll be too much for us to say, or for him to say, we have to go find that money and then get it approved. It would be better if I think if we have some money there available for Mr. Adams to utilize at the table. So a suggestion that I was going to make to this council, and a motion I'd like to do, is keep $50,000 in that in there for grants. And there was a suggestion made by Councilman Salvatore, which I 100% agree with, and that was to remove 10,000 out of HMAP and keep 40,000 in there, and sharing that 10,000 in each ward. So I'd like to make that the motion to take that 10,000 from HMAP and 30,000 from grants, and have that $40,000 go into Fund 545.
Mr. Orcutt, in your motion, did you want to specify the 5,000 for each ward? Is that what you're asking to do?
I believe that I said it was 10,000 per each ward. That was a suggestion through Mr. Salvatore, and I believe we talked about possibly coming up with separate legislation for that, if I remember correctly.
Is that the case?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
just for a point of clarification, we do have the legislation already on the books. All we have to do is bring it back out and amend it so that we can make a couple changes and make sure the money is set aside for each ward, and maybe even change the way it's distributed. Maybe get back to where the original intent was to do a 50-50 split and to get bigger projects done on homes. We all know that it's very difficult to get something done for $5,000. If you want to put siding or windows or a roof, first thing that comes out of the contractor's mouth is $10,000. There's no shortcuts to home improvement today. So I think we will revisit that next week, and we just amend the existing legislation to accommodate what we're about to do here tonight.
I'm okay with that. I'd still like to be able to take. You're talking about that separate piece of legislation with HMAP alone, correct?
Right.
All right. Well, I would still like to make that motion where we do keep $50,000 worth of grant money in there, and 40,000 in HMAP, which would take $40,000, and we can move that into Fund 545.
So I'll support that.
Council, if I may, though, I would make a suggestion on that. If you're going to leave the 40 pending pulling the current legislation out to make the amendments to, you may want to not appropriate that at this time. Then
I think it's okay that we appropriate.
is it?
Yeah, I think
it's a council. It's a
I think
council's
we get
discretion.
moving along with this capital budget, and
That is fine.
my intentions.
Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. I'm hoping we can add more to the 10,000 per ward, but until that point, would it be better served to just keep the 40,000 together and then like maybe fix one road completely rather than fixing pieces of a little road for 10,000 here? I mean, if 5,000 doesn't do much for a house, 10,000 doesn't do much for a road, in my opinion. So I'd like to see us at least make one whole street complete or filled in, and instead of dividing up to, piecing that up and chopping it up into little pieces.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I don't think we're pulling 40,000 out just to appropriate it for one street. What we're trying to do is get the original number up so that we can do a whole street, and hopefully when we're all said and done, there'll be an additional $300,000 or $400,000 into the roads program that we'll be able to accommodate everything you just said.
Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I agree with Eddie. We do need some money in that HMAP program. We took away the sidewalk program. I just can't see taking all the amenities, anything to improve the house. If a homeowner has, takes $10,000 and he takes it up in his ward, that's an improvement. 40,000 isn't going to, that won't fix one driveway. But I agree, we need the 40,000 left in HMAP. We need to leave some money in the grants program. We have to have something to help induce people to come. And if it comes down to it, we need to, find more grant money. I'm sure, something could be finagled. Yeah, we do need to leave something in the HMAP program. We have to give something back to the people. We can't take everything away from them. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that point with the wards and the streets, well, I'm going to belabor the fact, obviously we like all our bad streets to totally be reconstructed, but when I look at probably one of my worst ones, and that would be Dolores between Holland and Sylvia, to crack fill, which really won't do a real lot, but it would help. That would be 11,100 to be honest. So when we take this money, like when you say 10 award, it does help. Does it solve the problem? By no means, absolutely not. I mean, to reconstruct that whole area, it's 500. So, and to resurface it, it's 161. So them are the numbers we're looking at, but it does go a little bit of a way. I mean, we're stretching absolutely, but that 10,000. I mean, I'd love to get that and get that done tomorrow, because I heard it this weekend from that group. So Sylvia Court's another bad one, but I'm not going to go into that with the numbers. But dividing this money up might not seem like a lot now, but it does add a little bit. Again, it won't solve the problem, but that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. I by no means want to pull all the money out of HMAP. In fact, I'm more in favor of leaving the full 80,000 in the HMAP program. However, I do realize the need to get roads repaired, and I'm willing to, meet you guys halfway and pull the 40,000 out. I just would like to see the 40,000 stay lumped together and get more bang for the buck with your more spending power than dividing it up into $10,000 chunks. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Orcutt.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for clarification, and just for everybody that's following along, what we have left over after in that fund was $130,000, and what we're doing is we're not taking everything out of there. We're still going to leave money in there. We're going to leave $90,000 into economic development. The motion that I made was that we reduce the grant amount from 80,000 down to 50, and we take that additional, that $30,000 and throw it into Fund 545. I'm just trying to spread the money out here. I'm just getting warmed up. There's money that I think I found that we can put into the roads and give money to the administration so that they've got their grant money, and also I'm trying to give money to the people that are trying to improve their homes with this motion. So it's 40,000 stay in HMAP so people can make improvements to their homes, and I believe we have, there's a number I heard between 5, 6, and possibly even 7 out there right now with people that have applied for that program. So it's not to take the money out and a little 10,000 here or there. It's taking 40,000 out, still keeping those programs working, and taking 40,000 out and just adding. And like I said, I'm just getting started here. I'm trying to get some more roads done. And the motion was just for 40,000 and keeping 50 grand in grants and 40,000 in HMAP.
Right, so to clarify, the $40,000 was just a full pull going into 545.
I'm well aware of what he's doing.
Yeah, so.
I'm not confused if that's the issue.
No, just for everybody's clarity as we've spoken around it.
Okay.
Mr. Salvatore, did you have something at that point?
No, I was just going to piggyback a little bit on what Councilman Orcutt said. Really, the discussion for how we disperse the funds and how the legislation is amended is probably for a later date. All we're just appropriating is $40,000 for the program. If council elects not to do it by ward, that's fine. If they want to do it all in one ward, that's fine too. Or they want to change the amount, that's fine too. But right now, we're just trying to move some money around, play the shell game here a little bit, and perform some magic and try to get a little more money into the roads program. And then we can, at a later date, discuss the other funds that, and as far as the sidewalk program, it's not that we're doing away with it. We've come back and forth with that sidewalk program over the years. We do it for a while, we get some sidewalks fixed, and then we put it on the shelf. As we go forward, going into next year or the year after, if we see that the sidewalks are in need of repair and when we have the extra money, then we bring the 50-50 split back out. We're not taking anything away. We just did that program, so it's time to move on to do something else. But right now, I think the focus should be on getting this capital budget to the table so that Mr. Single knows which way to make his amendments, and administration knows which way he's going to move, and council we can work together and try to figure out how we're going to go forward with any other amendments to pass legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Orcutt, so for clarification, what fund are we pulling it from to put into 545? Do you have a number there, a fund number?
That would be from the, I don't have it right in front of me, through the chair to the finance director for economic development. What was that? It wasn't on my cheat sheet here.
Through the chair to Councilman Orcutt, if I understand the motion, it's to reduce the transfer to the Economic Development Fund, Fund 243, by 40,000. So 300,000 was approved by council. That will be reduced to 260,000, and that 40,000 will then be transferred from the general fund to Fund 545, the 2018 Street Improvements Fund. I think that's what council's looking to do.
Precisely. Mr. Chairman, did that motion have any support?
I support it.
It does now, sir. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to reduce Fund 243 by 40,000, transfer 40,000 from the general fund to 245 streets. Properly supported. 245. Or I'm sorry, 545, correct? Let's change that. So it is to reduce Fund 243 by $40,000 and then transfer that 40,000 from the general fund to Fund 545, which is the streets. Properly supported. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Encini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Mr. Orcutt, floor is still open.
I still have it?
I'm sorry?
Is it my turn again?
Yep, yes,
okay.
sir.
Thank you very much. last week we did the tax, legal, and finance. We appropriated $5,000 each for each one of those, and I believe there was a balance of $3,998. I was wondering if we could transfer all three of those to Fund 545 as well. And I don't know how we're going to break that one down, Greg, because I'm sure is that going to be the same thing out of 243?
Through the chair to Council Market, I don't believe there is a balance there. That 5,000 each was unrestricted. The total amount that was in that proposed appropriation document,
yes,
that I submitted to council, the difference between the amounts that were to the left of the $5,000 figure, that was in total amount. So the 5,000, there wasn't no excess monies there.
So all we did was just appropriate that money that evening for each one of those funds, and that's all we did, for 5,000 each?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Perfect.
Mr. Salvatore?
Just to clarify that, if I could, through the chair, to the finance director.
Your microphone's not working.
Did you break it again?
I did. I cut you off. I cut it before the
It's
meeting.
always Mancini's fault.
We're back.
Is that what you had to do?
I had to, I'm
Knock it
sorry.
around a little bit. The difference between what was originally discussed and the 5,000 appropriated for those three areas, did that money just go back into the general fund? Is that why the answer was the way it was?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore. No, what happened was we reduced the appropriation. We reduced the unrestricted dollars to the budget that was approved by council. So the law department's an easy one because they had $217 spent in legal books, law books, earlier in the year. So we already paid the $217 through capital, and we're appropriating another $5,000. Mainly they buy law books out of that line item. So their total appropriation, if approved by council, would be $5,217.
And how about the other two?
In the tax department, I believe that $688, I believe, is for the copier lease, and in the finance department, the $3,093 was for a computer and also the copier lease.
And the last one?
That was all three of them: tax, legal, and finance.
I was just checking to make sure you were paying attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Mr. Orcutt.
One last item here for service, and it's out of Fund 401, at line item 423. I believe on this cheat sheet that you made for us, Greg, that the only last thing that we had was $150,000 for that construction contracts emergency fund.
Yeah, that 150, correct. In the street construction maintenance and repair line, yeah, 150,000, that would be used for emergency purposes.
Correct. And the other three items we appropriated that money, and that was the pump, the blades, and the rear loader, I believe.
Yeah, so for service, through the chair to Councilman Orcutt, for service, what we talked about last week, what I have written down, mechanics 10,000, that was for miscellaneous tools. Sanitation was 45,000. That's for the rear loader. That's the lease of the rear loader. The sewers, 100,000 for the pump station improvements. Snow was for the plow blades, 20,000. And then we had the senior van, or the senior bus lease of 25,000.
Perfect.
That's what I had for service.
Okay, we still have 150,000 that we haven't decided what to do with, and we talked about that being the emergency fund. And I remember you giving us a few examples. Fayette, I believe, was one of them where we had an emergency over there, and we took some money. I would like to make a motion to move 75,000 of that to Fund 545.
Support.
Mark Mello.
Thank you. Councilman, with all due respect, that 150 is there for a reason, in case there's an emergency, a water break, things of that nature. We try to get a quick response to you, Councilman, whenever you give us problems. on memos and that, and we're quite diligent in that. I think that would handcuff us a little bit. I mean, if you're okay with, you know, things possibly lagging because we don't have the funds, again, you appropriate the funds, but I'd like to hear from our service director to think what his opinion is on this.
Mr. Garner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. It's exactly that. It's for emergencies. Road collapsing due to a sanitary or a storm issue, buckling of the streets. I think we did Snow Road down by Arby's 5 years ago, I believe. But I can't foresee them. I don't think anybody here can. I would hate to have to look for the money when we needed it the most. There's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Garner.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, or I'll go after.
Hang on 1 second. Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the finance director. Greg, in recent years, what's the largest amount that was needed for an emergency?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore, like I said last week, we did the 2 sewer repairs late in the year last year. One was, I believe, Fayette, and the other one was Forest View Circle. One year, one of the streets collapsed. That was, I think it was Rademacher possibly. That was around 90,000, 95,000 if I remember right. So, as I said last week, I think this should be the last item that we look at. We still have 3 departments to discuss here for capital needs: rec, police, and fire. Once council makes a determination of what dollars to appropriate for those departments, we can see what's left and then determine how much we possibly need for additional street improvements. My suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. I'd have to agree with the finance director. You know, that money is sitting there in case of emergency. I think maybe once we get later into the year, if we haven't had an emergency, and maybe re-explore, you know, maybe taking some out of it, you know, later in the year. But, you know, we got a long way to go in 2018. I'd hate to spend half of that right now. That's just my opinion, and I won't be supporting taking it all out now, or half of it out. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Greg. Greg, in 2014, when they had that collapse on the far west end, where did that money come out of?
General fund.
Was it general fund?
I don't recall. I have to look and see.
Okay, so just wanted to check. I didn't know if it came from there.
Councilman Mancini, I'll research it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Orcutt? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I did some figuring too on that fund too, but I didn't come up with 75,000. But I think maybe we ought to wait for that one at the last, you know, make our final decision on our draw from that. You know, I didn't go 75,000. I did have another number, but I would feel comfortable taking care of the other 3 funds and come back to that one. And I do feel we will take money out of it. I don't know if it's 75,000, but I just don't, at this time, I wouldn't feel comfortable in taking that amount right now. Maybe after we go through everything, then it you know, to be feasible, but I just don't feel comfortable right now with that.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Orcutt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a reiteration of what those questions have been asked already. I've asked for averages. I've asked for how much it costs for an emergency and give us some examples. Then I also talked about if our fund reserve policy was made. We did. We had that. We had actually $360,000 more dollars. So some thought actually went into this. I want to get some roads done for the people. That's why I made that. I've worked on this. I've been ready to do this capital budget for some time. But if you guys feel like you want to go through a little bit more and do some other, the police and fire first, I'll rescind my motion. But I just wanted you to know that when I did make that motion, I made it off of questions I've asked the finance director in private and up here. So I'll rescind that motion at this time, and we can come back to it. and hopefully this evening.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to paint any picture here that sounds like we don't want to take care of any emergency, but it took us a while to get that $4 million into that reserve fund, which for the old days we used to call it the rainy day fund. If anything serious ever happened and we needed to go into that's where we would go. We would take a vote of council and we would move it. That's what it's there for. It's a safety net. Thank God we have it. That was the first thing we did, and I'm glad that it's sitting there. But don't ever think that if an emergency hit that we wouldn't be able to take care of it, because we will. And I'm ready to move forward. I'm not going to rescind my second on that. If I just assume call the roll, because I think we're headed in the right track, and I think the city's well protected, and I think the safety nets are in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. There's a motion on the floor to reduce the SCM&R fund, construction contracts emergency fund, by $75,000, putting that into Fund 545.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman, that motion was rescinded by the one who made the motion.
But in order for the motion to be rescinded, the second one have to be rescinded first, sir.
Say again?
The second, when the motion was made, it was seconded. He would have to rescind his second, which overrode him taking that back.
All right. But the motion's not made if it's rescinded. The second's the status, second.
But the second would be the status. When the motion is seconded, that's the status. Therefore, the motion is valid. If the motion is not, when it's rescinded and the second's not rescinded, the motion is still there. That would be the point.
I disagree, but go ahead, it's your meeting.
So the motion on the floor, properly seconded. Michelle, please call the roll.
Burkett,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
No.
Mancini,
No.
Stem,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
as mayor of the city, I'd like to go on record and say that was a huge mistake, and that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving on. Next item. Mr. Scott.
Yes. Can we move on to the rec?
The floor is yours, sir.
We have 3 items, if I'm not mistaken. We've got the $15,000 for the kitchen, $15,000 for the front desk, $15,000 for the concession stand, and we had $21,552 for the copiers. Greg, through the chair to Greg, if possible. Greg, can I ask you a question real quick? Could any of these be moved? Any 3 of these be moved into any separate fund, like 525 or Fund 700? Any of these 3, where it won't be much of an impact on anything?
Through the chair to Councilman Scott. No, none of these items would all come out of the rec. All come out of the rec department, Department 341.
341.
The only thing, as I stated earlier, the concession stand improvements, I believe the director said he was thinking about buying some not game room equipment, but well, maybe game room equipment, and also video games, or that could come out of I would say that could come out of 250.
That's the concession, come out of 250.
Not the entire concession, but I believe there were going to be some video games that were going to be purchased. I don't know how much that dollar amount was. If it was a couple thousand, I'd say that equipment could be potentially bought out of the special rec fund.
Okay, and front desk registration, could that come out of 700?
No, I think that's a recreation center improvement. So just stay in that recreation center line item.
That would be 341 again.
Correct.
And the community room again, that'd be 341. Community room, city council kitchen.
Yes, correct.
So we're talking 30,000 out of 341. That's all I got for right now. I just wanted to get clarification on these.
Thank you. Mr. Poindexter?
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to the Finance Director, Greg, couldn't we just fund all of the 3 items from the Rec Department? Can we just fund those out of 250?
Through the chair to Councilman Poindexter, no, we have gone through that, so that's, you know, mainly it's program related. So let's say none those 3 cannot be expended out of Fund 250.
Okay. Yeah, I remember asking. I just didn't have a note of it. Thanks.
Mr. Salvatore, you got a drink up? Go ahead. Mr. Mancini, go ahead.
I'll let Mr. Mancini go first.
All right. Go ahead.
Through the chair to Greg, I know you stated with that 250 on that special recreation fund, and I mean, we can't take that out and let's just say put it back in the general fund, then move it somewhere. That's just a no. I know you covered this a little last week, so, and I don't want to keep rehashing either, but I mean, it's a nice chunk of change, and it, you know, played with me a little over the weekend too, but my heart, I just had to ask. So.
To the chairman of Councilman Senior, you know the answer.
Nothing, right?
Correct. You answered your own question. So.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Mr. Singles, this is your night. You're probably going to get an Academy Award for this evening.
Red carpet is out, sir.
Somebody left a letter on my door, and it was an email chain. It had a couple of members of council in it. It was addressed to you, asking some of these same questions. And for the record, I would really like to hear that we could finally put this to rest once and for all on that fund. I mean, other than actually writing it down and giving us a copy of it, I think we've been over it 3 times, and I think this hopefully will be the last time. But I'm concerned about it because if people feel like we can take that money and move it wherever we want, I would like to know, because if we can, I'm going to start moving it myself. But I'm taking your word at it, that your word is as good as gold, and if it can't be touched, it can't be touched. And I really like to bring this to a conclusion this evening.
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore, that is a special revenue fund. So the monies in there are restricted for the purpose of programs. So there cannot be money that is allowed to be transferred out of that fund into, say, the general fund and then out to another fund for, say, roads, for example. Then that cannot be done. So I'm still researching all the questions that were in that email, but that's the answer that I have, and I'll put it in writing and submit it to the individual that submitted the questions, and also to all members of council and the mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to the Finance Director, what prevents us from taking that money? Is it like federal law or state law, or is it an ordinance here in the city? What prevents us from transferring that money?
Through the chair to Councilman Poindexter, it's a special revenue fund. So like the when the police chief was here and we talked about the federal forfeiture fund and the law enforcement fund, you know, those monies are restricted by purpose. So you know, if you eliminated the fund, then you have to do further research on it. But you have to probably eliminate the fund, unwind it, and then from there, you know, spend the monies and just close it out. But I'd have to talk to the auditors and get clear direction on that. But the way it's established now, it's a special revenue fund. The monies are restricted for recreation center programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Scott.
Yes, and that's it. Can we make a motion possibly to take the concession and game room area and pull that 15,000 from Fund 250. I don't think that would be a major impact on that fund.
Mr. Single, go ahead and weigh in.
Through the chair to Councilman Scott, the monies cannot the monies cannot be expended in 250
You told me
for that purpose.
I thought you told me that fund was good at 250.
For the concession stand improvements?
Concession game room, yeah.
No, I said for the any game room equipment, but not any physical improvements to the bricks and mortar, wood. They cannot be expended out of Fund 250.
Okay. Just any clarification, thanks.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we're talking about recreation, I know we had some dialogue about the kitchen last week, and maybe reducing those funds down to instead of 15,000, reducing it down to around 5 or 6. I guess my question would be to the recreation director, Mark. Mark, do you still feel comfortable that we might be able to do something in that way, getting that kitchen done in-house possibly, or and reducing that amount?
On the on the front desk and on the kitchen, I did get quotes from a local company and Lowe's. So I have actual quotes, and that's what they quoted me. Now, can we potentially do that a little bit less? Yeah, I think we may be able to do that. But my concern is, as you guys do some of this, and respectfully, is that if we, once this is ready and we move forward and we do a project, for instance, the kitchen, maybe at the end of the day we can get it done for about $10,000, $12,000. So then there'll be some money extra. And at some point, you can transfer that money to another account, or we, go to the next room and see. I did get quotes, so that's what it is. But if we can, along the way, utilize the service department in some way when we do demo and things like that, we'll try to do that. As I said at another meeting, we'll try to use what we can, but. To reduce some of these, literally jeopardizes the project. So I do have actual quotes for your information, and I guess we can dispute those. You could say, well, we can maybe get it cheaper somewhere else. I will go wherever you want me to go to see if we can do it for a cheaper price. I've gone to a handful of places, so I think I've gotten something, and I know it's pretty competitive and pretty fair. So. But, well, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Anyone else? Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. I know remodeling a kitchen at your house, you're hard pressed to do it for 10,000, and a kitchen at a rec center for 15,000. That sounds pretty reasonable, and I'd like to see these items get done, especially while the rec is being enhanced, and it's going to be busier over there, and some of the space is going to be confined where some of the participants at the rec are kind of confined to certain areas. I'd like to see these get done, and I know we're trying to squeeze every nickel out of everything that we can, but I don't think 15,000 is unreasonable for each of these projects, and like the rec director said, maybe he can get them done for 12,000, and then he'd have 3,000. We'd have 3,000 left over. We can transfer at a later date. So I'd like to propose that we just approve the 3 items for 15,000 each.
I'll support it.
We put that in a form of a motion.
I'd like to make the motion to appropriate 15,000 for the kitchen community room area, the front desk improvements, and concession stand improvements.
Mr. Mancini still in support? All right, there's a motion on the floor to approve the kitchen area, front desk, and concession stand improvements at $15,000 each for the recreation center. Properly supported. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
No.
Salvatore,
No.
Scott,
No.
Bergio,
No.
Orcutt,
No.
Motion fails 5 to 2. 2 to 5. Mr. Scott,
Yeah, can we can we move forward and possibly take 25,000 out of them, 65,000, maybe restrict it to 45,000? I know Mark said you didn't want to do that, but I want to move forward. If we could take a little bit here, a little bit there, and if need be, then, you know, we'll find a couple bucks here or there to put in there. I just feel that maybe we take a little bit out of that just to, we're taking out of other funds too. Just, I know we're kind of restricting him, putting handcuffs on him, but maybe if we could take 20 to 25,000, something like that out of there, maybe 20,000 out, and he can go ahead with $45,000, and hopefully, you know, I'll work with him and try and get scratch and dents. I know somebody has got that, but we'll try and save some. See if we could save some bucks on that. But that's my motion. Maybe take 20,000 out of the 60, out of the 45,000. Take 20,000 out of there. Leave him leave $25,000 to work with.
are you putting that in a form of a motion, sir?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. So your motion is to reduce the 3 items that were just discussed from a total of 45,000 down to 25,000?
Yes.
Support.
Right. Motion to reduce those 3 items from 45 down to 25, properly supported. Discussion on the motion.
Okay, I'd like to have only seen 10, but I do want to see this project get going.
I'm sorry, you'd like to see what, sir?
Down to 10, but it's, I'll go with this because I want to see this get going. I think we've been holding this long enough. They're over there working.
Mm-hmm.
So I concur. I'm good. Let's go.
Anyone else? Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Scott,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
No.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
6 to 1.
Motion is approved 6 to 1.
Mr. Chairman, may, so that, this is for clarification, so I know how to put this ordinance together. So there was 45,000 in the kitchen area, 15 for that, front desk 15,000, concession stand 15,000. That was a total of 45. That was reduced down to 25.
Correct.
How about the 19,000? It's just, that was unrestricted under miscellaneous equipment. Is that staying in the rec? In the rec fund? So it would be 25 plus 19. So total is 44.
Yeah, I have no qualms with that. That's the going rate.
correct.
That's what it is, right?
All right, so it's going to be.
We have
so
to have to pay that much anyways.
So the
right?
19 staying in, and it was unrestricted. So if one of these, if the front desk improvement comes in a little bit higher, then some of that 19 can be used for that.
Correct.
Okay, I know work with that. Okay, thanks.
All right, we're all set with that. Moving on. Mr. Stem.
Thank you,
Haven't heard from you in a long time,
Council
sir.
President. On to police and fire. Through the chair to the mayor, were you able to get a breakdown from the chiefs what items were expiring on the list of items we mentioned last week with PPE and bulletproof vests, and a breakdown of cost per vehicle to lease?
No, I don't have that with me at this time, Councilman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Salvatore.
does anybody have that, the cost figures on the breakdown on the leases?
Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I was in. Me and Greg were talking on this. Yeah, we got a breakdown on this. One F-150 and 2 Explorers runs, the lease on them is $38,500.
Lease on the F-150 is $38,500?
No, the total lease on the one F-150 and 2 Explorer intercepts are $38,500. That's the lease on them. One F-150 and one Explorer Interceptor is $27,000 roughly. And if we go one F-150 and three Interceptors, it's roughly $50,000. Now I talked to Chief Foster about the truck, and if I'm not mistaken, Greg, as of right now, the state hasn't come in with their reduced, he thinks the reduced price on the F-150. Is that not correct?
Through the chair to Councilman Scott. Yeah, my understanding is state pricing hasn't been made available yet for the truck.
Okay, and these prices here for the truck right now is off basically sticker price, $39,000 or something like that?
That was through the chair to Councilman Scott. That was the estimate. I think it was $43,000 total with the changeover, the wrap, everything that they needed. It was $43,000. That was their estimate, but they felt it may come in lower than that once the state awards the bid.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Salvatore.
Just for a point of clarification, if anybody knows, the purpose of switching from a van to a truck, can anybody tell me why we want to do that? Mr. Scott knows?
Yeah, I met with Mr. Chief Foster today over at a resident's house to talk about some parking signs. And I asked him that question. He said the purpose of what that van originally was a prisoner transport van. The one that they had, the SWAT was using was a prisoner transport van. That's why all the seats were in there. He said they were going to the truck due to the fact that the SWAT manpower is not what it used to be due to the fact they're in that task force, the Southwest Task Force. So he uses that. He said it'd be easier to, in case there's an emergency, traffic signal doesn't work, it's easier to just throw a generator in the back of the truck. It seats four person seating. It also pulls a trailer too. So basically, he felt that it wasn't necessary to have as large a seating in the van because they don't have the forts like they used to, due to the fact that it's a joint venture now.
Okay, thank you. If I may continue, Mr. Chairman.
Continue.
Through the chair to the finance director. Greg, because of what the truck is going to be used for, would that be a candidate for the forfeiture fund?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore, that's a question for the chief. I don't know. I would say no, it's not, but I would rather have Chief Foster answer that.
I mean, if it's going to be used for task forces and things like that, I mean, it sounds like something that should be doable, that we should be able to get funds from the forfeiture fund to purchase it. I guess that's something we should hold off on and see if that works, and we only have to worry about maybe just buying one car now, or leasing one car now, and it would make more sense to me to stagger it a little bit instead of buying them all now, like we did at the last time when they all start to reach that magic mileage of when they're no longer functional. We have to buy more all at the same time, so it would make more sense to stagger the purchase of the vehicles and get one or two now, and maybe if more funds become available towards the end of the year, to purchase another one then. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of things that we can do if we find more money. If there's a windfall of additional income tax that comes into the city, I'm sure we'll find a place for it. But I think we really need to know that answer if we can use that forfeiture fund for this truck, because it would certainly make a lot of difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stem.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair to Councilman Scott, do you have a breakdown for just the one Explorer for a lease, or did you just have the package with the two and the 150?
No, you could talk. Ask Greg. These are numbers that we talked about earlier today. Maybe he's got that more precise breakdown. I don't have. I just have the group. I asked him specifically one truck, one vehicle, one truck, two vehicles, one truck, three vehicles.
Thank you. Through the chair to Greg.
Through the chair to Councilman Stump, I don't have it by individual. I didn't run it by individual vehicle, but from what the chief provided, I don't know if you all saw this document. The Explorer's $34,002 estimate for the vehicle price, the options, the wrap, and also the changeover. And then we have the F-150 at $42,900 again. So, but I don't have it by individual vehicle, just in total, as Mr. Scott illustrated a few minutes ago.
Okay, thank you. I think we need that information for the vehicle breakdown, individual.
Through the chair to the work. Greg, give me a list of what you'd like. I'll submit it to chiefs to make sure you get what you need.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Scott, in your discussions with the chief, do you know what was spec'd out? Was it a two-wheel drive F-150, four-wheel drive? I know you had said that this was a.
No, I was talking to him on a street corner. I didn't get into the. It sounds bad, but I was talking.
We'll leave the street corner part alone, sir. Okay. All right.
Having a beer, not like that. We were just
Mr. Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chair to Greg, these leases, are these all the same amount of years on these leases?
Through the chair to Councilman Bergio, yeah, it'd be a 3-year lease. I ran the projection off a 3-year lease.
All of them, even the senior van lease, they're all 3 years?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one else discussing on those portions, suggest we move forward to the next. Get those questions answered by the chief, so move on to fire. Mr. Stem.
Thank you, Council President. Also, Mayor, I'll send it to you in an email or drop it off. I think we need a breakdown for the $150,000 on the West End Fire Station. If we can get a cost, for the door alone and then the other aesthetics, I think that'd help us out a lot.
I have that here, Councilman. I'll ask the clerk to make a copy.
Thank you.
The council president will ask the clerk to make a copy, staying in formality.
Michelle, please make a couple copies, make copies for everybody. Gentlemen, while Michelle's making copies, I'll entertain a motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Motion so made.
Support.
Michelle's not here to call the roll, so. Let's see. Jimmy, you made it?
Yes.
Mancini?
yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Motion's approved. We'll take a quick 5-minute recess.
Council, will you need the economic development director here for anything else? Will you need the economic development director here for anything else? Okay.
Had to be.
Council, take your seats.
Yeah. Right.
We're hot.
It will, so eventually. I hope I'm around to see it, that's all.
Council, I'll take a motion to reconvene.
Motion so made.
Support.
Motion made, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Mancini,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Perugino,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Council's back in session. We were on fire. Not literally, but on the fire department.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Salvatore.
I think we still had a little bit more work to do on the police. I thought that we were going to talk a little bit about the vests, or did we cover that? Is Greg back?
No, we stopped with the, we stopped because of the questions on the truck and some of the leases.
So are we just going to move the police, or do we want to solve a couple of the issues?
Council's pleasure.
Well, if you want me to start, it's okay.
Mr. Mancini, go ahead.
Okay. I'm all for the outside vest carrier for that 10. I mean, that's one thing, absolutely. We have to protect our patrolmen. Obviously, we know at any given time. I know these have to be kept up to date. I know that, the newer ones are the better ones, and I don't think this is anything that we should even hesitate on. So I'm definitely for the 10 on the outside vest. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman.
Mr. Salvatore.
I agree. I think the vests are something that it's a no-brainer for me. I think let's just move on. Go ahead and approve the vests and move forward.
I support that.
Let me go to Mr. Orcutt.
Yeah, thank you very much. For some reason, I put asterisks next to everything that we did approve. Was that approved last week by any chance?
No, but if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think that's part of the, I think we get the money back, but after they're purchased. Is that correct, Mr. Single?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore. Yeah, that's correct. And this is a contractual issue or a contractual item, so it has to be purchased.
So I think we'll just authorize the expenditure and be done with it.
Let me go right back. Let me go to Mr. Stem first, and then we'll hit back there. Go ahead, Mr. Stem.
Thank you, Council President. So the outside vest carrier for 10,000, that's just the garment. The bulletproof vest, the replacement, they kind of go hand in hand. That's my understanding. So both of these items are together. For the vest, the outer carrier, which the chief spoke about, which is, the vest goes over the uniform and it's got the Velcro on the side, so in the office it's easier to take off. And the bulletproof vest is actually the Kevlar. So these two items are 18,000. They're both together, I believe. Is that correct, Greg?
Through the chair to Councilman Stem, yeah. Based on the original capital budget request that Chief Foster put together, yeah, the bulletproof vests were 8,000, and the outside vest carrier was 10,000.
For a total of 18,000 on the vests.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor to approve. Oh, Mr. Poindexter.
I just got a question.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to the finance director, Greg, was the 10,000 wasn't included in the uncommitted fund because it's 100% reimbursed? Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councilman Poindexter, the 10,000 is for the outside vest carrier, and that's not reimbursable. The bulletproof vests are. So the vest carrier wasn't part of the proposed appropriations. And if I could just make another comment, based on the chief's initial funding request, which was on February 3rd, he has 7 vehicles listed. He actually has 2 Ford F-150s on there. His total amount was $260,000, and then he has a column for the LE and the federal forfeiture fund, so law enforcement and federal forfeiture fund, and he's stating in there that none of the monies can be spent out of either one of those 2 funds. I'll double check with him tomorrow, but that's the way he put together his proposal. Is none of those dollars can be spent on a law enforcement or the federal forfeiture funds.
Greg, I think to recap on that, I think the way Mr. Salvatore presented that back, because it was going into the special operations portion of our police department with SWAT. That's why he was asking regarding that. Correct, Mr. Salvatore?
That's correct.
And I'll ask the chief tomorrow if any of those dollars can be, or if all the dollars can be spent out of either one of those two funds.
Great, thank you. All right, so gentlemen, there's a motion on the floor to approve the bulletproof vests and the outside vest carrier
At 18.
at $18,000. Properly supported. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Mancini,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion carries. Next item, Mr. Scott.
If I'm not mistaken, Chief said that the server replacements were something of that he also needed. If I'm not mistaken, he said he would love to have those because the other ones that he have are obsolete, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll make a motion for the 2 servers at 22.
Support.
Motion on the floor for the server replacements at $22,000, properly supported. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Mancini,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Orcutt,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next items. You have the building and jail surveillance camera system is another item that's on here. And that is for $50,000 with, well, apparently it'd be, Greg, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but $50,000, it's $100,000 total, $50,000 being expensed from the fund, correct?
Mr. Chairman, so that 50,000, 50% of it would be paid for through the LE or the federal forfeiture fund. So the total amount of that would be 100,000. But that, now we're digressing. We're getting off of the proposed. Those were the wish list items. The amounts that are the proposed capital improvement expenditures for the police were the building improvements. That's at 100,000, 50,000 in capital, half coming from the federal forfeiture fund, 20,000 for the detective bureau improvements, like another 20,000 through the federal forfeiture fund. So that's a total of 40. Council's is allotted the 22,000 for the server and another 18,000 for the vest and the carrier. So 40,000 has been approved by council tonight to put in the form of appropriation ordinance. So what's left is again the vehicle lease and the improvements to the detective bureau in the building.
Thank you for clarifying. Mr. Poindexter.
Thank you, Council President. Per our last discussion, we were at the point where we were going to hold off on the buildings until Mr. Salvatore proposed a plan of attack, I guess. So I was wondering if he was ready with that plan at this point.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I did have an opportunity to meet with the mayor, and I think we had a very good meeting on it. I'm hoping we'll have a couple more talks about some buildings, making some decisions in the area of new buildings. In fact, I was going to recommend that we take that for sale sign down on Brook Park Road on that parcel that we own, because hopefully if these talks continue and we move in a direction that makes sense, we're going to need that property. I'm not one for wanting to sell land right now. I'd rather keep it. So, but I really can't get too much into it yet because the mayor and I have got to meet one or two more times, I'm sure, before he's doing some research on a couple of things that we discussed, and I've got a couple more things to share with him. So I would like us to hold off on putting any money into these buildings at this time, and we could move this to the next caucus prior to the council meeting. Hopefully we'll have a chance to have some more discussion on it. And that also applies to the fire station improvement too on the west end. Thank you.
Your motion?
Mr. Salvatore, would you like to put in a form of a motion for those two items, or you just want to?
Well, when we're all done with what we're going to accomplish today, I'd make a motion that we move the balance to the next caucus prior to the council and then finish up whatever we can, and hopefully maybe we can share a few ideas at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor to remove the remaining portions of discussion on capital to the next caucus agenda. Properly supported. Discussion.
So,
going to Mr. Scott.
So Tuesday we're going to discuss police and fire. That's it, right?
Well, we could. I hope I didn't mislead. And we could still talk about the fire department, but I'm just saying these two improvements. And plus, I thought some of us were going to go over there and take a walkthrough and see look at firsthand what these improvements were going to be to that building, if we make them at all. So, if you want to talk about the fire department, that's okay. And we can move the rest of it to the next caucus.
So you're moving the police to the next caucus. You're moving the police, remaining discussion on the police.
Well, whatever's left this evening, we would move to the next caucus.
I got you. Okay.
Mr. Stem.
Thank you, Council President. To Council, through the chair to Councilman Scott, I believe the vehicles were the only thing remaining for police. Is that correct?
Nope.
I got the buildings.
Yep. Oh, also the building.
Building and police cars, both.
Building and police.
Okay.
Or yes.
Right.
Cruisers. Mr. Salvatore, do you have anything else on that?
Pardon?
Nothing else?
No.
All right, so I think, Greg, you'll need to rescind the motion, and we'll have to restate the motion.
I supported it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mancini, you'll have to rescind the motion and the second of it. Whoever was, I thought you did, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I rescind my motion.
I'll rescind my support.
Right. Motion's rescinded, so is support. Continue on discussion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Orcutt.
Is the only the last thing is fire? Yeah. And I think that general government lands also, but on fire, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to take a look at this breakdown. You know, a little bit more time than just the few minutes I've had here.
So he wants to put that off.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Salvatore.
I guess I'll restate the motion and we talk about this next. we move this at the request of as my colleague from Ward 3. Then I think anybody's entitled to more time if they want to look at it. I'm all for that. So I say we put this on the next caucus prior to the next council meeting.
17th?
Yes.
All right. Motion on the floor.
Support.
Motion on the floor to continue the rest of the discussion on the caucus agenda for the 17th, properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Poindexter?
Yes.
Stem?
Yes.
Orcutt?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Motion is approved. It will appear on the caucus prior to council agenda on the 17th for further discussion. Last item is adjournment.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Salvatore.
I think we have one other line item that we wanted to talk about was the improvements in the reserve of the $384,580. I'd like to discuss that if we could. If I could, through the chair to the finance director, Greg, could you break that $384,500 down? I know you touched on it a little bit, but could you be more specific as where what this appropriated for?
Yeah, sure. Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore. So 110 for the change order that was approved by City Council a couple weeks ago. The remaining balance would be used for any unforeseen items that come about once we move in there. As I said at last week's caucus meeting, or maybe 2 weeks ago, or last week's meeting, and maybe last Thursday at the caucus meeting, that I know one of the whirlpools, there's an improvement needs to be made there of over $30,000. There's a $12,000 purchase order that was approved for a while to move some equipment out of City Hall over into the safety building. So those are items, you know, a couple items, for example, that we weren't aware of at the beginning of the year or aware of when we put this budget together. So, you know, I was here in 1995 when we did the renovations to the recreation center. Although these aren't as extensive, there were many change orders, and you know, a couple $100,000 could you know, be spent pretty quickly. So that's why the money is there. And then whatever we don't use, again, I'll reiterate, we have a large 2019 road program. $2.3 million has to be funded by the city. So you may want to start thinking about how much money you want to borrow if you want to use these reserves here in 2018. The more we can save this year, the better position we'll be in 2019. I can't stress that enough.
I do understand that, Mr. Single. I guess I have one question on that fund. I know it's $284,500 left after the $110,000 for the door at the rec center. But is any of that money, was that set aside for the parking lot that the Ward 3 councilman brought up a couple of weeks ago about taking out the tennis courts and putting a parking lot over there? I know we talked about it, and that's off the table. I'm hoping that's off the table. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councilman Salvatore, my understanding is that project would not be done this year, but it could be spent out of those dollars. But my understanding is that that project's not going to be done this year, although it was approved by City Council last year.
So that money is sitting in that 284.
Again, that project, my understanding is that project is not going to be undertaken this year. So if those monies aren't spent, those monies would roll over into 2019.
But it was put there for that purpose, for the parking lot project, originally.
If we would undertake the parking lot projects, that's where it would be expended out of, that line item.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Mayor.
Thank you. As far as that parking lot by the tennis courts, sooner or later we're going to need that parking lot. You're moving all the City Hall personnel over into that building. You're going to need a parking lot. There's 4 spaces in the front where people, guests, residents come up. You know, they're going to need a place to park. So sooner or later, that parking lot is going to be needed. And, you know, I don't talk much about it, but I'll bring it up here now while we're talking about the rec. We need a roof on that pool. Irregardless of what we do with it, you've got to protect the asset of that recreation center, and you've got to put a roof on that pool. It's insane to spend $5.2 million and put a roof on half the building. And there's a lot of other things that I won't cover. For instance, the demolition of this building, demolition of City Hall, the moving expenses from here over to the new City Hall. And so there's a lot involved. And I've said it before from the beginning, and I'll say it again, Council. We have to get this rec center project right. It's something, you know, I inherited, but we're going to get it right because it's the center of the community. It's where people come. It's where families come. And if we want to bring young families into this community, we need a very viable and functioning recreation center. And it costs money to do that.
Mr. Scott.
Through the chair to the mayor, I continually hear about having to get the roof repaired. I totally understand it, but why would we pay? Do we know what function we are going to have the pool? Is it going to be an indoor-outdoor pool? Is it going to be strictly an outdoor pool? Are we going to use part of the dive tank to be used for community rooms? So how at this point, how do we know what we're going to do with the roof, how it's going to be utilized? Am I maybe, you know, I'm in construction too. You can't just say we're going to fix the roof and not know what we're using the pools for. So I don't know. I do understand the roof's got to be fixed. I totally agree with that. But at this point, I don't believe we have a purpose what we're going to use the pool for. I know we're envisioning, you know, an indoor pool, but is that factual? Or is it going to be an outdoor pool? Or is it going to be, are we going to lower the, are we going to fill the dive tank and use that for community room? If that happens, we don't need a roof at the existing point where it's at right now. So, like I said, I did approve the $5.2 million for the renovation. I knew that the pool roof wasn't going to get fixed, but at that point we didn't know what the use of the pool was going to be. We still, at this point, honestly don't think we know what the use of the pool is going to be. Has there been any indication as to what we are using the pool? Are we going to have the roof up at the existing height it is now? Do we know that? I'm just asking straight out.
Okay, I'm just asking, are you finished and I'll answer your question?
Yeah.
I'll wait for you to be done. Okay, thank you, Councilman. Irregardless of what we do, the roof's got to be fixed. You can't have half the roof on the building, because if that's leaking, it's going to affect the rest of the building sooner or later. You can't put half a roof on a building, and that's the situation we have there. As you know, I would like the pool to reopen. I think a lot of residents would. If we can't reopen the pool, we've got to utilize that space in some capacity. Some of the things we've looked at are probably a community room, as you just said, maybe an indoor soccer field, perhaps tennis courts. There's a lot of different things we can do. My first thing would be to put the pool back, take out the diving tank, and either put a community room there or a pirate ship type water park for the kids to play at in the wintertime. All these things need to be looked at. We need to see if we can support this in the community, and if the community will support it. But irregardless of what we do there, you got to put a roof on it. You can't have a roof on half a building, and right now we're getting estimates for that. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Salvatore.
Mr. Scott, are you done?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, to the chair, to the mayor. Mayor, I was talking a little bit about that parking lot for the tennis courts. I know it's not on the table this year, but it sounds like it's going to be on the table sometime. Are you talking about taking both tennis courts for parking, or just one?
we wouldn't take any of them. We wouldn't take any of the tennis courts. You've got that grass area between the new city hall and the tennis courts. That's all we would take, because the last thing I want to see is people parking up on that grass. We're not going to tolerate that. But right now, we'll have a situation, we'll have City Hall over there where the old daycare was, and essentially have 4, maybe 5 parking places in front. So
you're just talking about the grassy area between the tennis courts and the new City Hall?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Rick.
Mr. Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through the chair to the mayor. A lot of what you said at the end, I concur with on that pool. I mean, we definitely have to look at it. We have to look at that whole area. I think that's right over there, right in the heart of the city. We're not using it for anything right now, and it's probably one of the biggest pieces of waste of real estate right now in this city. And I concur what you always say, that it could, what we all believe, that the center could be a very viable area, a lot more than maybe even it is now. One of the things first, and I don't want to belabor this all night, is them 4 parking spots. Are they going to be handicap parking, veterans parking, Purple Hearts parking?
Well, there again, Mr. Mancini, you're going to have people coming to City Hall, you know, to go to the tax department, things of that nature. If it's all handicapped, they're going to have a pretty good hike to get in there. I'd like to afford the residents the courtesy of having a place where they can just park, walk in, do their business, and leave.
No, they kind of got to hike anyway when they go to the locker rooms, but I guess that's something we could definitely talk about later too. But I know we all have our feelings on it. I know the public has a lot of feelings on it too. Here's the take that I have on this pool, that I was in there a lot, and you swam too. You came at lunch, And I want to see it used. I like to hearing the part about a Pirate's Cove, a lap pool, things of that sort. It's got to be done right this time. We can't make the mistake. I think this is the administration and the council, and I always say the directors for it. So, well, let's move ahead. Let's finish this budget. We're going to start looking at things. I believe this, I know you say we have to tear this down. I think this could be a senior center. I think that could be a meeting room. I want to see this whole area used. I want to see Brook Park on a beautiful sunny night, this whole area packed.
But the problem is, the way the contract is, these buildings have to go down for the energy efficiency, that we can't put any more money into them. Now the question arises, okay, do we want to try to bend that a little bit and say, well, we won't pay the utilities, we'll have somebody else in here renting it, paying the utilities, but then you're in the same situation you started with. I think the whole, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of you were here before me, the whole concept of this was to go from 3 buildings to 1 to save money. So I think it kind of defeats that purpose if we keep these buildings running with someone else in there or renting them, and we could possibly violate the terms of that agreement, because at that point you're getting into a gray area.
Right. To save money at the Recreation Center for the energy conservation over there, that's what would do that for this. And I agree with you, but I'm saying here and over there.
I understand, Jim, but part of that contract was these buildings had to come down. That's how we were saving the money. That's how I said from the beginning, to me it's a no-brainer. When you go from 3 buildings to 1, you're going to save money, regardless. But these buildings right now have to come down, and what I'm distressed at is there's no money to do it. No one was put in to do it. So these are the kind of things we're going to have to face, and I just want to make you aware of them now, rather than later.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
I got a question through the chair to Ed. Ed, do we have any indication as to what roads we're gonna repair? As of today, do we have any indication as to what roads we're gonna do?
The list has been provided. I'm not aware of any changes.
Is that a concrete list? Is that something we are definitely going to do?
That was a list that was presented. So I mean, I guess it all depends on you guys and what you approve.
As of right now, they haven't been approved. So right now we have no dedicated roads selected. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted that out there because we'll leave it at that.
Complete, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Stem.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to council, just to remind everybody about what Mr. Single said about the 2.3 million we're facing next year. So we have to figure out, we're talking about roofs on pools that aren't being used. We have to figure out if this is a time-sensitive issue, and a decision has to be made what we're going to do with that space. If we're doing an outdoor pool, if we're doing an indoor pool, if we're going to renovate everything with a lower roof. So I think we have to sit down and talk and figure out what decisions we're doing, and remember the 2.3 million we're facing in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, I have a couple quick questions just to touch on what you had stated. I remember last year it was thrown about with a number somewhere around $3 million for the roof over the pool, if I'm not mistaken, along with additional cost to tuck point the outer areas of the building from when they had the meeting inside the pool. Have you seen that estimate, or have you obtained any additional estimates where possibly that number has changed?
I've seen that estimate, and in my opinion, it's way off. We're going to get 3 bids on that roof. We're going to competitively bid it, come to council with the best bid, and we'll discuss what council thinks is the best way to go.
You have a timeline that you might be looking at?
Probably within the next few months.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the mayor, as long as we're talking about the roof over the pool, is one of the options to take the roof altogether, or eliminate the roof and make it an outdoor pool temporarily, and possibly look at maybe putting an atrium over it later on down the road when we have more money?
Outdoor pools are really only good for in this area 4 months out of the year, but we'll keep everything on the table, and we can look at that. But again, we have an asset sitting there that half of it has a roof over it. We've got to protect that asset. I can't make it any plainer.
I think it's a little more complicated than that. It's not that simple. I mean, you're talking about conversations that I've heard over the last year or so. It's anywhere between $2 and $3 million to repair that roof, which we've probably got more than that in it over the last 15 or 20 years. Seems like we're constantly fixing that roof there. I'll wait anxiously to see what the plan is and what the proposal is.
Let me go on record saying this, Councilman. I can't believe it's going to be $2 or $3 million to fix that roof. I can't believe that. And I think 3 competitive bids will show that.
But you probably might be right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mayor, one more question. Has any of the mechanicals of the pool been looked at, or the pool itself, to see if there are any additional hidden issues yet? Are we aware of anything there?
Well, the pool's been closed 4 years. So everything appears to be okay, but you don't know till you fire it up, just like the whirlpools. We fired them up, we ran it for a few days, everything looked fine. Then we noticed some water was missing. So, you know, we had to get to the bottom of that, and lo and behold, we've got to pull one of the whirlpool tubs out. And it turns out it's not really a part of this project, that we may have to bear the brunt of the cost for that, $30-some thousand. And the contractor has told us, well, we may not be able to get to that till July or August, and we find that unacceptable. So we're talking right now with the company doing the renovation. They're working with us to help us to get that expedited as soon as possible. When we open those locker rooms, it's got to be done right. We can't be shutting them down 3 or 4 months from now again for the whirlpool or the sauna bath. It's got to be done right the first time. And I'm sure you all concur with that.
Definitely. Thank you. Seeing nothing else from anyone, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion so made.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Properly supported. Michelle, please call the roll.
Mancini,
Yes.
Stem,
Yes.
Poindexter,
Yes.
Salvatore,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Bergio,
Yes.
Orcutt.
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.